Hey guys, my name is Jay Wilson. I'm a freelance consultant through my company Onyx Reporting, and I'm really excited to do this webinar, Your Career in Domo. I'm calling it V2 because Scott, you and I kind of sat together with Grant almost a year ago now, I think, to record the first run through this webinar. And we're kind of using this opportunity to say, hey, let's take a look in the rearview mirror. What has changed over time? How have your thoughts and opinions in this space changed? So thank you so much for joining me. Nathan, hi, hello. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Nathan Harr. I'm with Mayer Electric. I've been a Domo master now a little over a year, just trying to learn and adopt Domo. I'm not a traditional IT guy. I'm an accountant. So I've adopted some of the things from Domo that I never thought we could do in the accounting world. So I'm excited to talk about it.
And Scott, I mean, I half introduced you for you, but let me let you speak for yourself.
Sure. I'm the Director of Business Intelligence Strategy at Mayer and the major Domo. We've been using Domo for almost 6 years now. And I'm also not a traditional IT guy. I came from the business. I have 32 years in the electrical industry. And I think part of what Nathan and I have in common, when we'll talk a little bit about today, is our industry knowledge or knowledge about what we do. And a tool like Domo has been a great combination.
I'm really excited for this talk because, when I've sat in on Domo pitches to potential customers, they're like, yeah, Domo is really focused on the business. It's all about enabling the business to unlock value from their data and like these kind of fluff words. But just hearing that your backgrounds are not in IT, that you guys are not BI developers or IT developers, I think kind of speaks to that point. So I'm really excited to share your viewpoint with the rest of my audience here. So I guess let's jump over to the next slide. This is one from our previous talk. And again, I'll include a link in the description below. But Scott, when we went over this slide, you were talking about like the different personas who use Domo. I guess, could you give us like the 30-second review of where you were at last year and how your teams have kind of changed, or maybe how your rollout strategy has shifted over time?
Sure thing. Yeah, we were, last time we talked, we were about 2 years into using Domo masters at Mayer. And the concept there is we take someone from a function or department and give them capabilities and some training on how to build content in Domo. And we've further down the road, obviously, with that. We have a few more folks that have started doing that. I've got different people in different levels of experience with Domo now. And the hope is always the same, though, that we'll follow the example. And honestly, Nathan has been probably the most successful of our Domo masters in building content for their teams. So it's just continued to grow, and we want to grow more. We want more Domo masters. 6 months from now, I hope we have twice as many.
And remind me again, Scott, do you guys have a central IT, a central BI, or did Domo come in at one organization? It was kind of a land and expand, and it's kind of grown organically from there. Where are you guys?
Yeah, I started out reporting to the CIO, and I've always been a team of one. I'm the only guy in my department. Nathan has a full-time job. Domo is part of what he does. It's a tool he uses, and that really hasn't changed. The difference today is I report to our CFO. So they really, honestly, it's been where do I need to sit, but it's really straddling both things. And I obviously work with sales and operations and all the other departments at Mayer as well.
Gotcha. And I guess, Nathan, we might have to ask Scott to close his ears, but when you first started looking at Domo, when you were first brought into the fold, I guess over a year ago now, what were your initial thoughts about the platform? Did you have a background or experience as a data analyst using some other BI tools? What were your initial thoughts, and kind of where are you at today?
Yeah, basically, where we were before is, we used basically Excel and PowerPoint and Microsoft products that way, and using Power BI and things like that before we used Domo. And when I first saw Domo, I was scared to death, thinking there's no way that this accountant can do it, and just trying to look at behind some of the beast modes and all that stuff. And because, accountants are normally table oriented type view type people. And we don't look at, pie charts a lot. We don't look at different things like that because we just want to see the numbers. And that was a really hard part initially for me is how do I design what I have in my brain, what we need, and put it in Domo.
Mm-hmm. So like, how do I use Domo to give me the answer instead of giving me a big old table where I have to hunt for the thing that I'm looking for?
Exactly. And how do you build it so your audience can, we have, accountants don't like change, and all the groups, executives and accountants don't like change. And those are the hardest people to try to win over in this process. And that's what I thought was going to be the biggest challenge. And we have now, we don't use any before. We used to have a binder that we'd have this big that we'd print out our financial statements, our balance sheets, our P&Ls for every branch,
Mm-hmm.
every company that we had. And we'd have schedule after schedule after schedule. And now all that's gone away. So all of our schedules that we'd have for, our executives or senior leaders or regional vice presidents, all of those are now in Domo.
Mm-hmm.
So we took a manual process and automated it using Domo, and just the man hours that we would take to create those reports and schedules are now eliminated. We're now, as soon as we, as soon as the data refreshes 15 minutes, if not sooner, we have financial statements, we have balance sheets, we have outliers, we have all sorts of things.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that perked my ears that I wanted to get into. You mentioned right there at the end, you output you have a bunch of reports and schedules that get generated, and your last word was, you have outliers as well. One of the things that, Domo likes to sell itself on is this ability to promote management by exception. And I guess to that end, were you able to, or are you in the process of using Domo for more than report generation? Do you actually use it to automate, like finding the weird exceptions or finding the weird things that we need to take a closer look at? And
yeah, absolutely.
Are you using there?
Yeah, absolutely. So before, we have a branch P&L report for every branch that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So before we closed a month, the accounting department would print those off and we divide them up as a group, and 5 people would get this branch or these branches, and then we'd manually go through and look at each line item on a P&L, trying to spot with our eyes the outliers. So that's our old process. So what we did was we took that and we said, let's put this in Domo and let Domo analyze the data. Let Domo kind of give us the needles that are in the haystack, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't have to create all these Excel reports that we're trying to identify. Domo's identifying them for us, giving us the exceptions. And I think we're using 2 standard deviations as our detection tool there. And that helps us reduce human error, because what I would find might be different than what the other accountants would find or what the other people would think were significant.
I love it. You mentioned you're using 2 standard deviations as kind of the boundaries of your exception reporting. Now, was that obviously a statistical tool or concept, I guess? Is that, Scott, is that coming from your background, or Nathan, is that something where from within the business you guys were like, yep, 2 standards of deviation is what we need to be looking for? Who said that?
We actually fine-tuned it over time. We tried going with 6 sigma to begin with, 3 from the mean. And that was, in the beginning, I told the accounting department, because again, Nathan mentioned they don't like change. We can, we have control over those parameters, and we can set it where you feel comfortable, where they can still look at it. I challenged Nathan that long-term, maybe we raise the bar, that we make it, at some point we can get to 3, or we can actually build other detection rules into it, where if it's less than $100, throw it out altogether. If it's this list of accounts, we don't want to see those. Again, we can expand the logic to fit the circumstance, and again, make the pile of needles even smaller. And it's really pretty simple. We just basically bring in the data. And then we have again, a group by that I mentioned that does the standard deviation. And then I have a couple of steps here that calculate a limit base, which is, we have some parameters in here for how many standard deviations. We mentioned we use 2, and what is that? So that's the limit base. And then the next is we want to set an upper and lower limit. So it's the average plus that limit and then minus. So you have those 2 lines on the SPC chart. And then basically we then join it back on by each account, so we can compare the actuals to those numbers. And we should also mention that part of this, we filter to the last 24 months. So we're looking, that's the amount of data we're using for comparison. And it's, I don't even remember anymore. Nathan, do you remember how many rows of data we're evaluating now? Is it something like, I want to say it's on the order of 500,000 individual accounts per period. And it takes just a couple of minutes for that to happen. And then, like I said, it goes into, it's either an outlier, yes or no, and then is it above the mean or below the mean?
Right.
Those outputs.
So I just really quickly wanted to comment about the transition from Magic 1 to Magic 2. I think one of the complaints a lot of developers had that still use MySQL for, one of the complaints they had about Magic 1 is just how many tiles it took to get anything done. And I just really quickly wanted to highlight some opportunities for simplifying your ETL. Here, for example, all of this, adding a constant, doing math, these can now be combined into one tile, the formula tile. And if you slide over to the right, in a similar way, all of this, right, we used to have to create a filter because we couldn't do a case statement. Well, now we can. So all of this could actually be simplified into one case statement in a formula tile. And we've knocked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 tiles removed just by adding a case statement. So I really want to highlight how powerful that upgrade to Magic 2 is, and encourage everyone to go back and take a closer look. I'm noticing that you're using the right outer join here. And that's a convention that we picked up because in Magic 1, you would get the duplicate errors, the duplicate error message, where if your duplicates were on the left instead of on the right, things would go sideways. That error largely has gone away. And in fact, the join operation is a lot faster in Magic 2. So guys, if you have the opportunity, take it and run. So that was my love letter to the Magic 2.0 team. They've done phenomenal work on making Magic 2 much more usable. Scott, this was not me tearing apart your ETL, just saying, guys, if you have the tool, get it and start using it because it is so much.
Some of these are taking 15 minutes or so, and they went down to a minute. We had others that were over an hour, depending on how expensive the steps were. Right. But they would get down to just a few minutes. So
I mean, 15 minutes down to 2 minutes, that's like, I can't do math that big. That's hundreds of % improvement.
You know, Nathan mentioned it earlier that our window of refresh from workbench jobs that are pulling data from our systems, we were running every half an hour or so. And with 2.0 ETL, we were able to take them all the way down to 15. I could probably do less than that, but
don't let your AE hear that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the requirements. Yeah. We're good.
That's amazing though. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing I want to make sure Nathan touches on, Jay, is that, you know, this is how we detect them. Nathan, what do you do once you find them, and how to document what you're doing?
Yeah, basically, you know, that's another tool that we're now using for our branch managers and senior leaders, that we now have an outlier tool that we just give to them that says, here's the needles. And then what we're doing is, in our old Excel sheets, we could enter comments or enter explanations for why your utility bill was up $5,000 or why such and such expense was this. So what we did is we've created an email that we send directly to Domo so we type in Excel our comments that are tied to a specific GL account in a specific period and for a specific company. And we email those out to Domo with our explanations of, hey guys, this is why your whatever expense is up. And we write our explanations so they can see it and say, okay, the county's reviewed this expense. I don't need to look into it. Or, hey, I need to understand this further. Let me pick up the phone and call them or email one of the accountants.
But you're doing your data entry into Excel, send it into Domo, have it integrated into your pipeline so you see your comments along with the output data set.
Correct.
Clever.
Exactly.
Clever.
Yeah, we're doing that.
I want to turn you on to an idea, one for you, like,
Yeah.
you know, in your copious free time. So I've done a similar kind of pipeline, but instead of having people sit and type into an Excel, I have the output of my data flow be a web form. And that way people can they'll get an email notification saying, hey, you've got 5 new rows in your exception web form, go fill in the data in the web form. And then it's just there, and then I can join it into the output data set. And that might be a clean way of making sure that I either accumulate history, but also, and this is what I am most interested in, making sure people, so, I mean, I do want to get an opportunity to see a little bit more of that pipeline that you've built, but you know, I can't have a year in review interview, if you will, without talking about COVID. And you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse. So I think the angle that I want to take is the question of like, one, did working change? I mean, I assume the answer is yes, but more importantly, did Domo help in that transition to working remote and all of that?
Yeah, I think definitely work changed, and you know, where you work is the most obvious thing we saw. Is we had a lot of folks working remote. Nathan and I are both still working remote, but really for the leaders at Mayer was almost an immediate thought is that we were pretty embedded with Domo when COVID began, but it was an accelerant, that it sent things into a new level, that they were going to work virtually. What we call our SNT, or strategic natural team, our C-suite and all the RVPs, they would meet and talk about once a month what was going on. During COVID, because of the business pressures, they changed that to daily. And our president, Wes Smith, asked that I build a page for president's key metrics, and it was everything from cash flow and sales trending and a bunch of other things, and Nathan was a big part of that they would look at it. It would be a touch point every day that they could see the kind of the state of the business, what was happening, how things were changing. And they had instant access to information, where I can't imagine how we would have done that. We would have honestly probably would have had a bunch of people getting up really early in the morning through brute force building spreadsheets. So did Domo help? Absolutely. And
because it could
even when
automate the process of updating these reports because it was a predefined workflow. Okay.
This is a card on our month-end financial page where, you know, we have to report on different type of categories of expenses. So each month we would go in, I used to have to go in and update a PowerPoint with this section. So where it says auto expense, get by hand and manually type it out, look at the data, well, did this go up? Did it go down? Did it increase? Did it decrease? And now we have it written in where it says auto. So I have the categories written, auto expense or IT expense or rent expense or whatever, but the numbers and the change, and also the description of it changes. So if auto expense really did increase, then you could really see that automatically changes when the data actually changes, if it's really up or down.
And it's subject to filters.
For the viewers, what card type is this?
This is a notebook card.
A notebook card, yeah. That we just wrote in beast modes for each of the formulas, and then it automatically feeds based off of budget or whatever we're looking at or comparing it to.
And I love in the top right corner, you have a little date. It tells you September 21, 2021. So I know I have that context of what I'm looking at. This is so cool.
Yeah, and that automatically updates too off of a beast mode. So I don't even have to change that either. And also the cool thing about this is, you know, we can report this on a company level, which is what Scott has filtered, I believe. I don't know for sure. Yeah. But then you could, if he would change a filter to a district or a branch or a single business unit, that
Those
automatically
numbers change.
feeds and changes based off of the lowest level of detail at a branch level.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just see auto expense on this branch decrease, that amount versus prior year, and everything automatically changes at that.
I'm noticing you've got PDP enabled on this data set, Scott. Can you talk to me a little bit about why PDP is here and like what function it's serving in this context?
Yeah, actually, one of the first things we talked about with the financial reporting was making it available to people at the right time. So in this case, PDP is applied based on a report status that it goes in conjunction with a period. So let's say right now we're in the October accounting period, which is not yet released to everyone to look at other than accounting. At some point when we get to the end of the month, Nathan will do his review. When they reach a point, they'll change the status and release through PDP so that the CFO can see certain data, and then the president, and so on. So we actually have, I'll show you a very simple web form that Nathan updates, which is just a list of all of our accounting periods. And it has a status code and a status description, where if we get down here to 21, if I can find it, there you go. So you can see he's in final period, or September is closed, they're in a status 5, and October is still in pre-close. So Nathan would move this to whichever the next status point is, and we would progress during their review process and approvals. At some point, our president says, send it, and Nathan makes it a 5, and everybody in the organization gets to see the results.
Okay, interesting. So this is a little bit different, a departure from how people typically think of PDP. I was assuming that PDP was just limiting me to my data because I'm in Nashville. But here you're saying we don't want to see people to see the transactions before the period has been closed, and so you're applying PDP on the report status or the report status code. I love that it's a variation of a dimensional table, right? Because you've got your period begins on or period ends on that you can join to your fact table and filter your filter and apply PDP in that way. This is that's really clever, dude. I like that. I like that.
It worked out really well, and it's one of those things where you need to control the message, you need to control the availability of data without having to take the page away from everybody and then give it back,
Right.
So PDP, like you said, could be used to limit who sees which entity. But in this case, we used it to just say what part of the data or which period is ready to go. And Nathan, when you make a change here, how long does it take for it to be available to everybody?
If not seconds.
Yeah. Because you're building this, you're joining it using a data set.
Yeah.
Ah! Right. I love it.
Yep. So it's a very quick thing. He could roll it back if he needs to, but we rarely do that. So again, I mentioned earlier the power of that web form. It's such a simple thing, but it becomes a triggering mechanism for a whole massive process.
I think this alone makes the video worthwhile. I should just share it with all of the financial controllers that are using Domo. I'm like, y'all, if y'all want to get slick, go see what Mayer are doing. What other arm of the org, or what other department would you say has benefited the most from Domo, but also has benefited the most from finance's ability to operate as consultants, Nathan described?
Yeah, I definitely think, other than the selling organization and our leadership, accounting probably has had in their own department the biggest impact from having Domo. And there are some others that we're developing the same way. Operations has been huge as well. But I think, it's always difficult to say, where does this really impact that end user? And I think for the folks that it's funny, we're going through a change right now. We still have the old way, and we have this new Domo process, and we still have a few managers that they want to stay with the old way. They're kind of going to hang on to it as long as they can. But I think the ones that have embraced it, in the conversations I've had, and Nathan could tell you if this is different, but they have more time to review the data. I think it's easier to understand now than ever, because like you said, Nathan, it's just a bunch of tables. And now there's two types of people in the world, ones that like tables and ones that like those visuals. And it's been impressive, Nathan, that you've learned how to use the aesthetic. But I think our managers now have more time to digest what they see, compare themselves to their peers that are, these two branches are about the same size. Why does he make more money than I do? They can learn that in Domo, but they can also reach out to Nathan and his counterparts in the accounting department and find out, well, what am I doing wrong? Or what could I do better? I read somewhere, I don't remember where, from sales comes chaos, from operation comes order. So you think about what we're doing here, we're bringing order to the chaos. And that's really what the accounting function does at the end of the month, to say, all that stuff that happened, here's the result of it. And if they can, you can look at that information and learn what to do differently in the future to improve the result. And I think now we're positioned better than ever for people to do that exact thing.
Okay. Nathan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, exactly. Scott said it perfectly. And we also have managers that want to dig into the details, and they want to see it for themselves. So we've given them the ability, but we also have managers that just want to see 5 key items. So we've given them those 5 or 6 key items so they can just see that instead of getting into the details. So we've given multiple views and multiple opportunities for the different scope of what people want to see as well.
That's wicked. Okay, so a little Domo advertising, I guess. When you think about the past year, what would you say has been the most beneficial feature, or ideally beneficial new feature, in supporting the organization? And then Scott, on your side, the most beneficial feature in terms of just being able to manage and implement them? Nathan,
I would say mega tables, Yeah,
and
mega
mega
tables.
Why is
that?
that?
And the pivot table functions, because a lot of our, we report on each branch. So, a branch is going to want to see, geo accounts or whatever by branch, and it's easier to use in a pivot table within Domo. Scott gets on to me because visually it's not the prettiest. But for those that like the details, those that want to get into the details, there's no other tool within Domo besides the pivot table and the mega table that they could get that information for.
Pivot tables and mega tables. And Scott, what about you? What has helped you the most in terms of implementation and rollout?
Oh, wow. There's so many things I could say. I mean, I think honestly, the people that I deal with at Domo and the folks in the dojo like yourself, Jay, there's always things that come up that you're not really sure how to handle, and to be able to leverage that experience, that expertise. The tools are so good. There isn't much today that we couldn't handle. And I have something that came up today that, it's a big business problem, but in about 10 minutes, I had all the data they wanted and all the cards they needed to answer the questions or analyze what they're doing. So to me, it's, personally, it's things like the new version of Magic ETL that rolled out today. I was on beta. That thing is great. The speed, the way it works, the flexibility we now have to do things that we couldn't do before. Honestly, the web form, it's such a simple thing, but that tool is so great. I've seen some really good examples that you've put out there, Jay. But again, it's a great way to use the data. And then also the data set views. Wow, that's huge. And just the ability to, like, I had one question that came up. Hey, we have this list of 450 items. We need to know every order they've been on in the last 3 years. So I did an inner join on the list of items and our sales data, and I had a view in 10 seconds.
Right.
And we're ready to go do what we need to do. So
the speed of those data set views is amazing.
It's awesome. It's hard to imagine. And for a long time, Jay, I have not burdened, is the way I would say it, the Domo masters with the data work. That I've done that for them and handed Nathan data sets ready to use. With the advent or introduction of the data set views, I've given permissions and started training the Domo masters on how to do that, because there are going to be times when they want to just go, even just filter the data and export it. Sometimes it's a great feature in the view. And Nathan has done a couple already. And Nathan, again, we'll ask you as a non-technical user, what do you think about the data set view? Is it easy enough to use?
Easy enough to use. It's so simple, especially for non-IT guys or people that don't understand, everything that everything else Scott does. It's so easy, so simple. This really could be a game changer.
I think Nihar is really going to appreciate hearing that. I know that the team at Domo has worked really hard on dataset views, and it's been a long road getting that into GA. So that's wicked. Last question on this slide, I guess. What were the hardest? I said big learnings, but what were the hardest learnings this year around Domo that we could use to kind of help other people that are kind of on your same journey? What were some of the things that you learned the hard way?
You know, my mind goes first, Jay, to change management and how you introduce things. You know, we honestly, we took a shot before we had Domo Masters. We took a shot with our credit department on building content for them and then introducing it to them. And that failed miserably. They didn't have ownership in it. So they didn't think it was the way to go. By contrast, having the Domo Master, we had a Domo Master in credit, and we're thinking about what we did with accounting, having that advocate in the group, someone who does the job that would build it with them. You know, one of our most analytical accountants, Jeff Gandy, he is a very tough nut to crack in terms of changing. You know, he's done certain things for a long time, and he believes in his process. I think Nathan would agree. He's become an advocate for Domo because he doesn't have to do all the work. We do it once, we set up whatever it is we need, and then he can roll forward. So that ownership, that involvement, letting somebody like Nathan lead Jeff through a process where we want to take away all mystery, show him behind the curtain. There is no secret. Right. This is how it actually works. That frees people from that anxiety or burden of, well, they're not going to believe it. Because in the beginning, Jeff would go look at our old system and Domo and compare them constantly and see, well, it doesn't match. And his automatic assumption was Domo's wrong.
Right.
For a lot of times it was the old system that was actually wrong. So again, I think that's it's change management. It's, you know, you could have the best content in the world, but if your people don't believe in it, it won't work. They won't adopt.
Can you dive a little bit more into how you help get that buy-in from when you did your round 2 with the credit side?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was honestly what I was saying. We had an associate in that department who was a Domo master. And when the team wanted something, we would build those cards, and we started a process, and Nathan knows I talk about this all the time. We did small wins. We would find a win for, let's say, Jay, you came up with an idea, something you've wanted. We would build it, and then I would let you tell the story to the rest of the team. It was your win. And that built momentum. And then whenever somebody would say, hey, this is a great card, we would ask, what's next? And we would keep that momentum. So that was what was different, is we started involving them more and more in solving their own business problems. And as you know, as soon as you introduce a card, there's a new next level business question that comes out of that, and then addressing that. So it became very much a crawl, walk, run approach, that all we need is the catalyst of the first question to get started.
And when you're thinking about like the nuts and bolts of implementation, are you doing ETL work with them sitting next to you, or are they kind of giving you requirements and then you kind of walk away, do a dev session, come back to them? How does it impact their daily workload when they're when they're a Domo master?
Nathan, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our stuff is we give Scott, here's the parameters of what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And Scott takes it under the hood. You know, I do have a full-time job besides what I do with Domo, but it also has saved us time where we can, you know, Scott gives us the data, I go build the card, we validate the card, we'll go back to Scott and say, hey, we need this change or this, you know, this thing added, and he does that, you know, and then we get the data, and then we validate again and go through that process again. And it has really been getting people to trust the data, as like Scott said, has been our biggest struggle.
Okay, guys, well, that takes us to the end of our interview. Scott, Nathan, thank you again so much for taking the time to sit with me and talk to me about how you're using Domo in your organization, how your career, how your work has fundamentally changed over this past year. And thank you for showing off all of your cool work that you've done, Scott. That's amazing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, I'm a part of a team, and really a lot of these are, like I talked about wins. These are Nathan's wins. He has done truly incredible work for Mayer. And I really believe when people think of Mayer about our business has changed because we have done a lot of it is due to the work that Nathan has done. Nathan, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, and I'm really proud to work with you.
Thank
Oh my
you,
God.
Scott. Oh, I hate praise.
He really does.
Well, I mean, honestly, truly, that is, we talk about how powerful the Domo platform is, how it unlocks the ability to do all these cool and amazing things. But really, when it comes to change, we were talking about change management. It is about the platform, and the technology, but it's also about the process and the people. And it is very cool to see and hear stories about how your process has changed over time. And of course, that's driven by the people who make it possible. So Scott, don't undersell yourself either. I mean, you've been working hard on Domo as well. So
thank you. But I feel like I don't have to do that. I think everybody sees what we're doing together, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
that's wicked. Guys, thanks so much for joining me today and listening in on this interview. If you like what you saw, go ahead, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, check out some of our other tutorials. We mentioned a couple videos and tutorials that Scott has done in the past. I'll be sure to link those in the description below, and we'll catch you another time. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.